On today's show, what a jam-packed episode I have for you. Russell Westbrook is back. Kenyon Martin Jr. is arriving. And is James Harden also coming? Gonna be talking about it all on today's Locked On Free Agency Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day. Your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, LA born and raised, going into my 19th season as a Clipper fan in this fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper and NBA and NBA history content. Locked On Clippers, free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms, including YouTube, where I want you to let me know what you think of all three of these topics. I know it's a lot, but I want to hear what you think. Obviously, all this stuff occurring during the weekend, so I wasn't really able to talk about it all in separate episodes, but we've got all week to get into the thick of these things, the details, and those three things are Russell Westbrook coming back to the Clippers. It is official. And then Kenyon Martin Jr. being added to the Clippers. Of course, we had Kenyon Martin Sr. in the second half of the 2011-12 season, our first Lob City year, and he was a fantastic Clipper role player. And then James Harden. Apparently, he wants to come to the Clippers. All the rumors in terms of which team he wants to go to, which teams are targeting him. The Clippers have been the loudest, so I'm going to be giving my take on all of these things. And this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy entry app around. Going to be talking about Prize Picks a little bit more later, but let's get into the thick of it. Russell Westbrook is back. The thing about Russ is he's so polarizing. Everyone seems to have their opinion on him, and it's very much either hate the way he plays, he's inefficient, he's not a good shooter, he's never won a championship, he's erratic, or it's I love Russ, he plays with so much heart, first ballot Hall of Famer, triple-double king, such a great all-around player, the point guard the Clippers needed. And it just seems like everybody has a divided opinion on him. Now, me, I'm a Russell Westbrook fan, even before he was a Clipper, as I've stated many times on this show. But I was one of those guys that didn't want him on the Clippers. I'll admit, you guys all know, the receipts are there, the episodes are there. I didn't want him on the Clippers because he had just come off the worst period of his career, playing bad basketball with the Lakers. I mean, obviously the Lakers got better because they brought in a lot of good players, but Russ just wasn't the guy for their team, and you could just see that losing him made them better as well. But that is not to say that Russell Westbrook is not a positive player, not a good player anymore. And that is exactly what we found out when he came across the hall to us, the LA Clippers, and showed everybody, even though it took the first 5 games, not necessarily his fault though, but we hadn't won the first 5 games, even though he had some really good games in that stretch. Nobody was giving us credit. Nobody was thinking, I shouldn't say nobody was giving us credit. Nobody was thinking that the move was a good one when the Clippers were 0-5 in the first 5 games with Russ. But then as things started to marinate, things started to gel, the players started getting more familiar with Russ and one another, things started going well. And then Paul George goes down against OKC and the season's basically over. Russ then goes to the playoffs and plays way better than it seemed like anyone expected, even his stands. And boy, he's got a lot. I know some of them are going to be in the comment section. But so as for the Russ stands, well, it'll be good to have you back, I guess, for the upcoming season. I mean, people on my If you follow my personal channel, you know how I feel about player fans. But I'm very happy to have Russell Westbrook back. And here's why. not just because I'm a fan of his, but I genuinely do believe that Russell Westbrook makes the Clippers better. And here's why I believe that. Because let's just talk about on the court. The reason we brought him in, first off, is because Ty Lue wants a guy who is known as a point guard. And Russell Westbrook, yeah, people have had the discussion throughout his career, is he a true point guard or not, because he averaged 30 points a game and led the league in scoring. But he is the closest thing to a great passer. I mean, he is a great passer, but the closest thing to, I guess, a point guard that the Clippers have had in the 2-1-3 era. The starting point guards have been Patrick Beverley, Reggie Jackson, Eric Bledsoe was playing shooting guard, like Russell, and then John Wall. I mean, he didn't really start. So, and then Terrence Mann for a small stretch. Russell Westbrook is the best point guard there. That is undeniable unless you just dislike the guy. And you saw right away, I saw in that very first game against the Sacramento Kings, the second highest scoring game ever. You can find the vlog on my channel. I was in attendance. One of the best regular season games I've ever been to. You could see right off the bat that Russell Westbrook's passing was on another level from any of the guys that we'd had. I mean, I said the same thing about John Wall when he played in the beginning of last season, because Patrick Beverley and Reggie Jackson, in terms of passing, that's not necessarily a very high bar. But Russell Westbrook showed he was even better than John Wall. Crisp passes, also just moving the ball around to get guys touches, not necessarily always making the assist pass. In OKC, they relied on Russell Westbrook to constantly penetrate and create for everybody. But with the Clippers, sometimes he needs to just move the ball to Paul and Kawhi and let them create and step out of the way. Now, that posed the biggest question and concern, is Russell Westbrook off the ball? Teams are going to sag off him because they don't respect his jump shot. And one thing we saw with Russ that we didn't see enough with the Lakers was a buy-in from a mental perspective, and that is because he felt appreciated. When Paul George is going there publicly campaigning to get Russell Westbrook, Marcus Morris is doubling down on that. I mean, given Ty Lue's philosophy of wanting a point guard, the Clippers really wanted Russ. And that's part of the reason why I think, even besides the basketball things that I'm about to name, why it is good to have him. Because if the players want him, we want the players to be their most comfortable they can be. We want them to be surrounded by a group of guys that they believe in. And yeah, I was very critical of Paul George playing GM because I still believe, okay, the star players should have some input on front office decisions, but at the end of the day, that's not a necessity. I still think GMs should do their job, president of basketball operation, front office people should do their job, and players should play the games. And that's not to be confused with me saying that players shouldn't have any power or anything like that. But Paul George publicly campaigning for Russ and putting pressure on the organization, I wasn't a huge fan of it at the time. But the thing is, Paul George, by wanting Russell Westbrook, by saying, I don't want the ball in my hands as much, he is showing you that he does not want the responsibility that Ty Lue, or Lawrence Frank, I should say, was giving him when constructing the roster the way that he did, with not really having a great point guard. Paul George said, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to come off curls, come off screens, catch the ball in my pocket, work quickly more often, and I want the ball, handling the ball and pick and roll less. And Russell Westbrook helped him do that, and I honestly think that the Clippers were playing better when Paul George went down. Then I don't know if I'd say at any point of the season, because the stretch right before the Clippers got Russ, they were playing pretty well, but it just looked like the ceiling was higher because the offense. You know, the reason why Russell Westbrook was brought in, besides the whole point guard stuff and the passing and just having that point guard mentality of let me get it to certain guys, and that's one thing I've said, I've beaten it like a dead horse, but John Wall came to the Clippers to me to prove that he was still John Wall. Russell Westbrook came just to prove that he was a positive player that can contribute to winning. And you can say that's what he's been like everywhere, but Russell Westbrook, I mean, with the Lakers, it was different. He was getting paid $46 million. He got demoted to the bench. It was a lot. Vogel never really believed in him. But with the Clippers, you know, he didn't have that price tag. His expectations were so much lower. And, I mean, I thought he played like an all-star in the playoffs. And that's ultimately the reason why the Clippers needed to bring him back, is because he showed that he could be great in the playoffs, even though he hadn't really had a great series for his standard standards since 2017 when he won the MVP award. Now, a lot of people are skeptical of the way he played in the playoffs and say he only did that because Paul George and Kawhi Leonard weren't there. Well, if you would excuse me, was it not an amazing 3-for-19 game in Game 1 where Russell Westbrook played the best defense of any Clipper, got huge offensive rebounds, blocked Devin Booker, and then knocked the ball off his leg to win the game and made 2 clutch free throws? Is that the Russell Westbrook with Kawhi Leonard that played that way? I believe so. And I have no reason to believe that Russell Westbrook's jump shot would have been so much worse with Kawhi. It wasn't like Kawhi was completely ball hogging and not giving him the ball. As I just said, the guy shot 19 shots in Game 1. So it's not like he was being completely restricted. Now, okay, maybe you have a point if you say with Paul George, now he becomes the third option. But given Kawhi and Russ the way it was going, I'd still, if Kawhi was healthy that series, I'd still put my money on the Clippers. You can call me a homer, but it seems like most neutrals would agree because the level that Kawhi was playing at, yeah, Devin Booker was insane in the playoffs. KD was pretty damn good as he always is. Kawhi Leonard looked like the best player on the court in those first 2 games. But Russell Westbrook playing so well is part of the reason why I said absolutely run it back. And the main reason he was brought in, besides the things I've named, his rim pressure and his ability to get to the basket and his athleticism, the things that we lacked. Law Murray of the Athletic Clipper beat writer wrote a really good piece on Russ and KJ Martin, and in that piece he said per 48 minutes the Clippers averaged 53 points in the paint in Westbrook's minutes on the floor. On the season, the Clippers ranked 27th in the league with 45.5 points in the paint per game. So that's nearly an 8-point increase with Russell Westbrook on the floor. So he helps us in that category. Also per 48, Clippers averaged 16.4 fast break points in Russ's minutes, and the Clippers were ranked 21st in that category in the league with 13. So about a 3-point increase in fast break points with Russ as well. And the Clippers made 51% of their shots with Russ on the floor. If you just take that number, that's higher than the NBA champion Denver Nuggets for the season. The Clippers ranked 13th in the NBA in field goal percentage overall for the season. So Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, he helped the Clipper offense. You want to say they were sagging off him and all that? Look, the guy shot 36% from 3 as a Clipper. 36% from 3 and 49% from the field. So he wasn't a bad 3-point shooter. And then he was also cutting more than he was with the Lakers. He was setting screens more than he was with the Lakers. And I love Russ as the roller, not just because of his finishing ability, but his passing and quick decision-making on the roll downhill. And then also his incredible ability, and we saw it first against Golden State and then in the playoffs, to crash the offensive glass. We're talking about one of the best rebounding guards in NBA history. And we saw in various moments when teams would sag off of him and ignore him, he would crash the glass and make teams pay. So that whole he can't shoot the ball thing is completely overstated in my opinion. And then there's also just the moments where they're sagging off, they swing Russ the ball, and he can just go downhill and make a play because the Clippers spacing was much better than the Lakers spacing was before the trade. So yeah, I'm ecstatic to have Russ back, and mainly because he plays with so much heart. He's a true vocal leader, and that was emphasized and vocalized by all of his teammates in the season and in the exit interviews. So I'm really happy to have Russ back, and the best part about it, I got to give Russell Westbrook a personal hand for agreeing to the deal. We knew we couldn't afford that, or we couldn't pay him that much, but he agreed to come back on a 2-year, $7.8 million deal, so essentially $4 million a year for Russell Westbrook. Mind you, Joe Ingles just got paid $11 million for the next season. Joe Ingles. So Russell Westbrook, he clearly showed that he wanted to stay home and wanted to stay with the Clippers. And when we got first ballot Hall of Famers taking pay cuts to pay with the Clippers, you can say what you want. Like Howard Beck said, it's facts. The market for Russ wasn't that big, but I can guarantee you he could have gotten a better deal. But he wanted to play for a contender. He wanted to play for the Clippers here in Los Angeles in his home. And I'm so happy that we're going to have Russell Westbrook for a full season, because I honestly, that was my favorite part of the season, was having Russ on the team. And I love his heart, and we lacked heart all season long. And we also lacked availability, as Joey Lynn said when he came on the show. And that's what we will hopefully, knock on wood, have with Russ. But coming up, another player that we're going to also have, a new one, Kenyon Martin Jr., son of former Clipper Kenyon Martin Sr. Going to be talking about what his addition means to the team on the second segment coming up. Let me tell you a little something about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy entry app around. How does it work? All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players and predict if they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry, and it's not competing against other people. It's just you and the projections available. And Prize Picks doesn't just offer projections on basketball. It offers projections on the MLB, PGA, college sports, the WNBA, whatever you want. They've got it, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right. So the Clippers made a move that really put a smile on my face besides the Russ one, and that was bringing in young Kenyon Martin Jr. from the Houston Rockets in a trade that was worth 2 second-round picks from the Clippers, one in 2026, which is origin is to be determined, and 2027 from Memphis to the Houston Rockets for KJ Martin, who will be entering his 4th year in the league. He was the 52nd pick in the 2020 draft. He is from Southern California, went to Chaminade and Sierra Canyon, and has one of the highest verticals in the league, 38.5 inches. He is explosive. If you recall, I was at this game earlier this season when Paul George hit the game winner. KJ Martin was giving us the business. He was electric at the rim, and we had no secondary rim protection with those small ball lineups and guard-heavy lineups, and he was making his 3-ball. Now, that's the one thing that wasn't super consistent from KJ last season. He shot just 31.5% from 3, and he's a 68% free throw shooter for his career. But we'll see how much you can improve on that. At the end of the day, the Clippers have a lot of three-point shooting. What we needed was an athlete at the power forward spot, a younger player that can add secondary rim protection, and that's what he's going to be able to do. The fact that we went out and got someone like that is going to be huge, I think, for our defense, our athleticism. It's going to be a great lob threat with Russ. Now, defensively, I don't know how good he is one-on-one. I don't know how good of a help defender he is, although with rim protection, I'd assume his help defense is what's best. I don't know how good of a pick-and-roll defender he is. Is he going to be playing small ball 5? He was playing some he was playing some 3 after Eric Gordon got traded to the Clips. For the Rockets this past season, but I assume he will be playing the 4 as the second tallest guy on the court for the Clippers more often than not, maybe even at the 5 in small ball lineups. But you really can't tell how great someone is at defense unless you watch them very consistently. And I don't believe in defensive highlights and defensive metrics very much. I need to see, do you know the scheme? How quick are your rotations? Are you communicating? Are you in the right place at the right time? How good is your lateral movement? How good can you guard in the post if you're a big? All these different things. Do you know what's needed in the moment on a defensive possession, and are you executing that? Those things matter. And you need to watch games, in my opinion, to see those things, because a lot of these, plus, minus, and the net rating and the defensive rating goes down with him on the court. That's very dependent on who they're surrounded with on the court. So I'm excited to see KJ Martin. Fact of the matter is, and the bottom line is, the Clippers got a young freakishly athletic player at the 4 spot, and that is exactly what we needed. Ivica Zubac led the Clippers in dunks last season with 130. No other Clipper had more than 47. KJ Martin had 173 dunks last season. That would be more than our number one guy in Ivica Zubac. Don't expect much offensive creation from KJ Martin. He will be a play finisher, not a play starter, in my opinion. But I am so excited for this move. Where he fits in, is he going to start? Is he going to come off the bench? That is dependent on who else we have on the roster. We will go into more detail about that later in the week. But I'm just ecstatic to have the guy. Having Kenyon Martin Sr., different player, obviously. Kmart was able to play a little bit bigger. I'd say he was a better mid-range shooter for sure, 18 feet. And he was a fantastic defender and a great rebounder. I don't know how good of a rebounder KJ Martin is. We'll just have to see. He's probably better than Marcus Morris, though. But as I said, time will tell. But coming up, James Harden. What a topic this is. Will he actually end up being a Clipper? Going to be talking about that coming up. All right. Whew, this one is something. The last topic on the agenda, James Harden. So it was announced that James Harden and the 76ers could not see eye to eye on a new contract. Where have we heard that before with James Harden? Brooklyn. They didn't seem like they wanted to pay him after his poor final 2 games in the Boston series. And, he has struggled with injuries more the last couple of seasons. He's only getting older, and he doesn't have the best reputation in the playoffs. So, James Harden is opting into the final year of his contract. He's owed about $34.5 million, if I'm not mistaken. It's either $34 or $35 million, or $33 to $35 million. And then his contract expires after this upcoming season. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but Russ does have a player option after this upcoming season, so we'll see how he feels and just what direction the Clippers are going. But James Harden obviously has 1 more year guaranteed on his deal that he's now opted into, but he's opted into it so they can trade him, right? So now he can go to a team and they don't have to sign him to a new contract for big money. He can go to a team just for this season, and then he can figure out his free agency situation after it. Now, he has put the Clippers and the Suns were the 2 teams that were rumored to be the favorites for him. And I'm thinking to myself, how much do we want? We're really trying to build a super team here. And I get it. You want to just load up on talent because Paul George and Kawhi's availability and all that. But is there any point where it's too much? I mean, Russ, Harden, Paul George, and Kawhi, that's a lot of personalities. What was Russ and James Harden's departure like? Because I'm hearing that Russell Westbrook signing that deal doesn't have anything to do with James Harden. He could still end up being a Clipper. And the names that we're hearing involved, Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, and then one of, I believe, either Brandon Boston or Terrence Mann might be a pick attached to that. But Marcus Morris and Norman Powell, it seems like everybody's okay with letting go of. And by the way, I really like Norman Powell. A lot of people don't like him because he's just kind of a bucket getter and not much else. But he really, really helps us getting to the rim and getting to the line. And we really lack that. He's also just a great scorer off the bench. That was one of our more consistent players. And we missed him when he was out with that shoulder injury. But I like Norman Powell. And I think he's decent value at his $18 million contract. But James Harden, so it really all comes down to your opinion of James Harden, just like with Russell Westbrook. Me personally, I'm not even going to mince words. James Harden is my least favorite star to ever play in the NBA, playing style-wise. I have nothing against him personally. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer and at his peak, one of the best offensive players the league has ever seen. But my problem with Harden is this. One, he dribbles entirely too much, in my opinion. He's a fantastic passer, though, I will say, and a great pick-and-roll player. One of the best pick-and-roll players, in my opinion, in the history of the game. But for years, he neglected the mid-range. I don't necessarily love that. Now, with Philly last year, I saw him take more mid-ranges. But James Harden is notorious, and rightfully so, for underperforming when it matters most. He over dribbles. He's pick and choose defensively in terms of his effort. And I honestly just don't know how serious he is about winning championships. His actions, after certain losses just don't show of a player that seems to hate losing so much. And maybe that's just me looking at it from the outside and not knowing the guy personally. But James Harden, just his effort on the court doesn't exude seriousness to me. He's quit on multiple franchises with his passive aggressiveness and not really fully demanding a trade and just going half-ass sometimes with Brooklyn in those last couple of games and Houston. You had Calvin Murphy, a Rockets legend, saying he quit on the local broadcast. This is not a guy that I personally would like on the Clippers. And plus, we're going to gut all our depth for him. So we're going to play with 4 guys: Westbrook, Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George. If 1 or 2 of them are injured, we're just relying on Harden to get all the buckets. No more Norman Powell. Terrence Mann, Bones Highland. These guys are good connective pieces. But if you have to rely on those guys to create buckets, I don't think that's it. But I get it. To have those as insurance, Harden and more stars, is big time. But I'm just more of a fan of right now, what's working in the league is 2 stars, maybe 3 all-star caliber players, and a good supporting cast that's well-rounded alongside those guys. These super duper teams with a bunch of stars, hasn't worked since the Warriors. Lakers in the bubble had 2 stars. Toronto, they didn't even have a clear-cut bona fide second star. Lowry and Siakam, I think, were both star caliber players. But they weren't none of them are superstars, let's put it that way. I get it. Harden and Russ are past their primes, but I also just don't know about that basketball fit. Russ, and don't we want Russ to be the playmaker? Isn't that why we're bringing him in? Harden, since he has left Houston, honestly, no, since D'Antoni became his coach in Houston, he's been like the point guard wherever he's gone. He's not been the shooting guard off the ball. The guy doesn't move off the ball at all. He's a statue. So that's another reason why I'm not big on his game. So we already have Russ and Paul George who have their dubious playoff reputations or whatever. But having another guy like that, I get it. He's from here. But I don't really think it's a great move. I know a lot of Clipper fans will disagree, and they like Harden's game a lot more than I do. And they want to just stack up on star power for insurance if these guys get hurt. But I also just don't want to root for that. It doesn't guarantee us a championship. And if we lose, it's going to make us look 10 times more ridiculous. The pressure is going to be insane. I just don't really want to root for James Harden personally. That's just a personal thing. I'm saying that, okay? If it means the Clippers win a championship, of course I'm down. But, man, I would really just like to win the championship with Kawhi, Paul, Russ would be fantastic. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, only because of injury concerns. I think if we're healthy, we got a shot. A good one. But I don't know. The James Harden thing, I'm not a fan of it. But again, I want to open it up to you in the comment section. Let me know what you think. A lot of it's my personal bias with Harden, but I gave you a bunch of basketball examples as well. Also, the foul baiting. I haven't mentioned that. Yeah, Norman Powell's a foul baiter or whatnot. Harden has relied on that so much throughout his career that when the playoffs come around and he's still doing his tween cross, step back flail, or when someone's hand checking him going to his right, he just digs in and tries to throw it up there and go for a foul. Sometimes the refs swallow the whistle and he's just relying on that stuff to get to the line and find ways to score that way. It's just, to me, there's a reason he has not won a championship. And granted, I said that about Russ, but the one thing I'll never question about Westbrook is his heart. I question a lot of James Harden in effort perspectives in throughout his basketball career. And that's why I don't want him. And I also don't want to just gut our team. And by the way, I'm hearing that Terrence Mann is the reason why the deal is being held up. Thank God. If we traded my favorite Clipper for James Harden, I don't know what I would do. I honestly don't know what I would do. You can call me a loser. You can say you don't want the team to get better. My opinion is that if we bring in James Harden and throw away Terrence Mann, Norman, and Marcus Morris, we are going to struggle to score when 1 or 2 of our stars are out. And honestly, with Kawhi out, if we have Harden, Westbrook, and Paul George, we may still be set, to be honest. But let's say 2 of them are out. Then I think we're struggling to score because then you're just relying on Bones Highland, maybe Brandon Boston, or Terrence Mann to create. And I just don't know about all that. And Zubats, which the Clippers just don't use well enough in terms of going to get a bucket. So I don't really I'm not a huge fan of it. I prefer having the depth around the stars. That's just my personal perspective, right? But the main reason too is if, okay, fine, I can understand if you don't bring Russ back and then you have Harden playing point guard, totally get that as the third guy. But Harden and Russ again with Kawhi and Paul, like what is this, the challenge of the super friends? We're trying to build the Justice League out here. Just because we wear red, white, and blue doesn't mean we have to be Superman and friends. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not about it. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. As far as Russ and KJ Martin, I am ecstatic about that. All we need to do now is either bring Plumlee back or replace him with another center, hopefully a stretch big as I've been trying to push for. And then that's about it. That's about it. Get rid of Marcus Morris, though. We need to do that. Get rid of Marcus Morris. Probably going to have to get rid of either Rocco or Nico because now we brought in another forward. So we'll see what we do there. What do we get in exchange? Maybe a backup wing, although I don't want that because I want Brandon Boston. Maybe a pick. It'd be nice to get a pick back, but I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on the episode. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more Clipper LA Sports content. And, of course, Locked On Clippers. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you know every single time we go live. And give me a 5-star review or even a 4-star review if you want to be a little stingy. Or just tell me you hate me in the Apple review section of the Apple Podcast. Actually, don't do that part. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.